I'm joined by Thom Hartmann of the Thom Hartmann radio show on Air America. AIPAC just held its conference in Washington.
Yeah.
John McCain spoke, Barack Obama spoke. Both received thunderous applause, and there was very little to distinguish one speech from the other. In terms of the foreign policy positions Barack Obama is proposing, with one very important exception, the willingness to negotiate with Iran, and I wouldn't minimize how important an exception that is. But when it comes to the other principles of how Obama lays out his foreign policy, it doesn't seem very different than what we've had, certainly pre-Bush, and certainly even in words, even Bush. In action, we've had a departure from Bush. But Obama's not charting a new course, do you think?
With regard to Israel, no.
Not just Israel,
nor is any country in Europe. Israel is a democracy and an ally, and they've been there with us and for us for a long, long time, and I expect will continue to be. I think that many of the foreign policy suggestions that Barack Obama has come up with are radically different from those of John McCain, particularly with regard to the war in Iraq.
Which?
For example, let's withdraw from Iraq. Let's end the war.
Obama has talked about hearkening back to the fundamental principles of U.S. foreign policy. He's talked about Truman. He's talked about Bush 1. Isn't that those assumptions of that foreign policy is what got us where we are?
Yes, and I think to some extent the America as empire, regardless of what we think our foreign policy is going to be, events have gotten ahead of us. We find ourselves in the same place the British did, I think, at the turn of the last century. Our empire is disintegrating, and we can't afford to hold it together any longer. On the other hand, there are certain political realities that I think any candidate has to acknowledge over the short term. It sounds cynical to say that it's appropriate for a politician to campaign on A and govern on B. And if A and B were radically different, it would be. Unfortunately, Bill Clinton governed as a conservative, although he campaigned as a progressive. The campaign of '92 was a very, very progressive campaign. Apparently 2 or 3 weeks, according to the story that nobody has denied, 2 or 3 weeks before he was inaugurated, Alan Greenspan and Robert Rubin sat him down and said, "Bill, we're going to tell you the facts of life." And all of a sudden everything changed. What this ultimately all boils down to is the idea, which is the extraordinary and wonderful thing about how this country is organized, is that we don't elect leaders in this country. The word leader doesn't exist in the Constitution. We elect representatives. We elect people to represent we the people. And every single significant change in the history of this country in direction, for better or for worse, frankly, has been the result of a groundswell of public opinion creating a parade so large that the politicians decided that they had to run out in front of it, hoist the flag, and say, "This is my parade."
But there's no such movement right now.
I believe that such a movement right now is called the progressive movement. It's called the blogosphere. It's called the netroots. It's called the whatever. It's driving the Obama campaign.
But are you concerned at all that in the movement to elect Obama, which to a large extent is also the movement to defeat McCain, if you get my meaning, that a more independent position, independent movement, may get submerged? It's barely exists to begin with. It's very weak. Are there voices that will say at this stage, not just later, that Obama, this is where the direction you need to go in?
Oh, they already are, and they have been for a long time. From MoveOn.org to Daily Kos to, fill in the blanks. The fact of the matter is the Democratic Party has moved dramatically on a lot of issues in the last 2 or 3 years, I think, as a consequence of pressure from the grassroots. And this is where, people say, well, you're supporting the Democratic Party, blah, 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 this is just a machine, quack, quack, quack. The fact of the matter is, the Democratic Party is ripe for the picking. It's a not-for-profit. It's owned by its members. I'm not suggesting that we should support blindly Barack Obama or the Democratic Party. I'm suggesting that we should take it, that we should infiltrate it and take it over. It's what conservatives did with the Republican Party 30 years ago, and to the extent that they thought that they could reinvent America in a new and better way that they thought was going to make a paradise, they did. It turned out not to be a paradise. Their dream turned out to be a dystopia, but they did it. We don't have to reinvent America in some new and radical way. We can look around the world and see what works and what doesn't work. If the Democrats go back to the roots of Franklin Roosevelt, go back to the roots in some ways of Thomas Jefferson and the populist and progressive movements that have informed, frankly, both parties, that animated originally the Republican Party and then became the property of the Democratic Party, from the Wobblies to the progressives in the 1880s to the Grange movement, through the women's suffrage movement, through the, name it, right? All of them. They all started from the grassroots up, from the ground up. They all took the form of eventually infiltrating one of the two major political parties, bringing that party to power, and then using that party to change America. I believe that people are now sufficiently engaged and energized that that's the cusp that we're at again. America has become a very progressive nation, and the world is a far more progressive place than the Democratic Party is right now. And that's a tide of history that's not going to change. It's not going to be rolled back.